We got Paul Robitaille, who's joining us. He is currently right now in Ottawa. He is the Senior Advisor, Indigenous Relations at Sustainable Forestry Initiative. So coming to bring good knowledge. And that's what I like about these webinars. It's an opportunity to learn, to grow, to build our capacity to listen to story. And just also just to be inspired and just to imagine, what a stronger circle, what a stronger organization, what a stronger nation, what a healthier nation could look like. And so all of these webinars are just here to bring that good knowledge to you, just to stir within your own self, and the job that you're doing with wherever you are in your corner of creators world. You're doing good things. And so we need you to be strong, to build on your own capacity. So it's great that you are here. And it's great that Can Do offers these webinars so we can grow and we can listen and be inspired. All right, so today's topic is Sustainable Forestry Initiative, a growing opportunity through forest-focused collaboration. So the Sustainable Forestry Initiative recognizes that Indigenous communities are best positioned to create the innovative forest-focused solutions that address their needs and priorities of today, while also building the lasting capacity to achieve their many aspirations long into the future. So you're joining Paul today. He's going to share some information about SFI's growing suite of flexible forest-focused programs, services, and investments that are already being used in 180 plus Indigenous communities and businesses to deepen their forest-focused relationships and advance their nation's self-determined priorities. Wow, 180 plus Indigenous communities. That is good news. So we're looking forward for you to share that story. So a little bit about Paul, who he has a wealth of experience advancing Indigenous rights recognition, relationship building, and socioeconomic development within sustainable forest management. More than 4 years. Ooh, that sacred number. He has led key aspects, sustainable forestry initiatives, Indigenous relations policy, and program development, including those related to advancing third-party forest certification for Indigenous communities. So I just think I'm just going to pass it off to Paul. Paul, who holds a Master's of Science in Forestry from Lakehead University and a Forest Technician Diploma from Confederation College. I'm passing the mic off to you, Paul, because I feel like you're going to bring some good knowledge. Thank you so much for lending your time, your voice to this afternoon's webinar. So there will be opportunity for questions afterwards. So feel free to use that chat box. If you have any questions or comments throughout, that chat box is there for you all to use. So use it, and we'll be sure to, I will make note of them, and we'll be sure to bring those up into the conversation at the end of Paul's presentation. Paul, thank you for being here. I'm passing that mic to you.
Thank you so much, Michelle. And yeah, especially for starting us off in such a good, high energy way. I'm hoping to ride that momentum and yeah, just keep all that positivity going. I also wanted to say thanks to Elsie and her team at Can Do for putting this together, this whole series together, for the invitation. And I'm really looking forward to sharing a bit this afternoon, this evening, about the work that we're doing at the Sustainable Forestry Initiative to just help grow opportunity in so many different forms, ultimately grounded in forest sustainability and forest-focused collaboration. So for those, I'm just making sure all my screens are synced up here. For those who aren't too familiar with the Sustainable Forestry Initiative, SFI, what's sort of important to know is that we are a binational nonprofit sustainability organization. So we're an ENGO, and we operate both in what's now Canada and the United States. And our mission, well, our vision really is a world that values and benefits from sustainably managed forests. And the way that we go about achieving doing that, recognizing that, sustainability, the different values, the different benefits, like all those things that connect us to forests, and that, people and the planet get out of forests, are really diverse. They're really unique to individuals, to communities, to regions, and just to all of us who have those interactions. So the way that we ultimately go about doing that work, recognizing just that sheer diversity, is by really working through collaboration. So hopefully through what I'm sharing this afternoon, you'll see that, while we do work in a bunch of different ways, and hope to continue to grow that, the thing that connects them all is that they are really intended to connect people with each other, connect people with the forests that they call home and that they love and they want to see sustainably managed for today and for the future. So, we really do think that collaboration piece, that working together, is kind of that critical principle that we need to center in everything we do if we are going to make a difference for people and ultimately for the planet. And we really do believe that, whether we're talking about local opportunities and challenges right up to the global level, forests can play a role in the solutions, in the pathway forward. And it doesn't matter if we're talking about clean water, biodiversity, really helping to manage in a good way the effects of catastrophic wildfire, dealing with, really one of the huge global issues of petroleum-based products and plastics that are just causing, massive, waste and pollution issues for the planet, or helping to create and sometimes quite literally build sustainable communities through forest products that are in and of themselves carbon sequestering and can be locally produced. Really, forests play a different facet in so many of our lives and so many of our communities. And by working with them and through them in good ways and sustainable ways, we feel there's just so much more we can do. And ultimately we can do that by working together. So SFI's board, right from that governance level, really is sort of emblematic of where we see some of that collaboration needing to start. So at that structural governance level, SFI is governed by a 3-chamber board of directors, and that does bring together different economic interests. So often those who are involved often in the forest sector, in forestry, as well as environmental interests. And you likely see some fairly prominent, very large ENGO type organizations, as well as others like the Canadian Parks Council that are involved with different conservation and stewardship focused mandates in and around the forest, as well as those that have more of a people focus, right from the Secwepemc Tribal Council, who has a member on our board, to different folks that represent labor interests like unions. Other thinking again, being that binational organization, those that represent and are helping to advance the interests of Black Americans, for example, and others, just to make sure that as we're thinking about policy development, program development, building out our networks of relationships, that we have the diverse perspectives around the table that can help make sure that we are really thinking about those things at a very structural level that then will filter through to all of those things that we end up doing. Our work as well is really grounded in diversity and inclusion. And again, right from being an employer, we have a staff of about 50 people spread out right across North America, to all of the work that we try to do to create impact on the ground, really thinking about how can we embed as much diversity of thought, of perspective, of people and communities, and really, break down whatever barriers that we can towards meaningful inclusion and ultimately equity, and in being able to receive value and benefit from the forest, recognizing that looks different to different people, right? We all value and see benefit in different ways, especially as something, as diverse as the forest itself. And then the other piece here that really does guide our work is we do try to be very tangible and seek those positive outcomes for people and for the planet through the forest, but recognizing that, you know, we're on a journey. We are always on a journey, and that the best we can do is, you know, do the best today with the information that we have, but commit to that continuous improvement to keep doing even better in the future as we learn and as we do and as we work with more people and communities. So these really are different values that do guide basically everything we do. And what we do is actually quite diverse. A lot of folks know us for sort of what we would call third-party forest certification. You see it in my Zoom background here. You see it on the slide in different places. That little leaf logo is something that you might have seen, you know, on a pack of toilet paper, on a 2x4, on different sorts of products. And really that is what we would call, you know, the SFI eco label. And I'll talk a bit more about SFI certification a little later in that presentation, including different opportunities for Indigenous-led economic development and how forest certification can really support some of those economic development visions of different nations, and how it's actually doing that today for many. But the other work we do is across what we call our 4 pillars. So of course, the standards, the forest certification, conservation initiatives, education, as well as more community development focused work quite specifically. So for the rest of the presentation, I'm going to go through each of those 4 pillars of work and just talk about different opportunities that we're creating, that we're trying to create, that might fit well with the different work that your nations, your communities are doing. And whether it is in that forest-based work itself or helping to build collaborations with other organizations, entities within your own territories and regions that can then help advance those different priorities in different ways. So really do hope we strive to have kind of something for everyone, because what makes sense for different communities is different, and at different times it's going to look different. So we really do need to work flexibly to always be there in one way, shape, or form, you know, to help advance communities' interests the best we can. And that's certainly the focus of my work at SFI. So the first pillar I want to talk about is our community pillar. That's where I work most closely. At the end of the day, I see all of our work as being sort of grounded in community, because again, it is all about collaboration. So when we talk about community, we often mean it in a couple different levels. You know, very often it is working with sort of those geographic communities on the ground. You know, folks like yourself, Indigenous communities, Indigenous nations, to help build and implement different programs and services that can advance those local or regional priorities. But often when we talk about community as well, we talk about sort of our broad community of all the different types of groups, communities, rights holders, stakeholder groups, right across the vast geography we work in, that we often are able to mobilize, bring together, and work together to find different solutions to different challenges. Again, right from that local level to the global. So different types of organizations that we do see as being part of our broader SFI community would be SFI certified organizations, those who actively utilize SFI certification standards, right from, you know, in the bush managing sustainable forestry operations, through to those different types of processing facilities, mills, if it were, as it were, to ensure that the practices that they're using to come by that wood that go through their facilities are grounded in good, sustainable, people and planet focused practices. And then the third part would be those that use our chain of custody certification, which are often the more end products that are maybe a few degrees separated from the forest, but it could be, you know, a company. We have a lot of pizza companies, for example, who you know, make sure that they are using that certification standard to ensure that they are sourcing from sustainably managed forests. And you know, those are the folks that you generally would see this eco label on. You know, these are your consumer products. And really there's hundreds, if not thousands, of these organizations, all in different facets of the economy right across North America, who are part of that aspect. We also have SFI implementation committees, which I'll speak about on the next couple slides, because they're a really cool, exciting, and unique part of the Sustainable Forestry Initiative that really do open a door to some pretty exciting collaboration opportunities for Indigenous nations. We also have our Project Learning Tree Network, which I'll talk about a little later in the presentation, but this is a network that's all grounded in environmental education for youth, as well as workforce development opportunities. So it's a network of educators, of youth-focused organizations, and different practitioners who are all about building capacity for that next generation of forest leaders. We have that actually on both sides of the border, and I'll talk a bit about both those two, which is why you see that distinction between Project Learning Tree and Project Learning Tree Canada. We also have some really cool work around conservation and our conservation impact sounding board participants. So these are often more like universities, post-secondary institutions, environmental nonprofits that are really engaged in land-based conservation work, whether it's around carbon and climate change, clean water, soil conservation, biodiversity. It's really research heavy and really does seek to find good data to inform good data-driven forestry practices. We then run a bunch of different community and conservation granting programs. So we work through that with a ton of different organizations and communities. And then last on this list, but certainly most important in my world, is working with Indigenous communities, businesses, rights holders to ensure that those really unique, inherent and treaty and title rights are really center to all of that work that we're doing, because if that is not there, then I really think we can't claim to hit the mark in any way, shape, or form. So that is our community in a nutshell there. One of those exciting pieces that I did mention was the SFI implementation committee. So as I said, this is a unique part of SFI, but a really potentially powerful door to collaboration and doing work on the ground. In the SFI certification standard, there is a requirement for certified organizations to get involved with an SFI implementation committee. And what these are is they work at the regional level. So there's one sort of out in Atlantic Canada, there's one in Quebec, one in central Canada, so Ontario, Manitoba, and then another one for Western Canada, so Saskatchewan westward. And these are groups where all of the different certified organizations come together generally a few times a year to actually work with one another on best practices in sustainable forest management. They have the opportunity to go through different independent audits they've received of their practices and share the feedback they've received, the different practices and recommendations that can help them do more. So that, again, thinking about that continuous improvement, we have that opportunity to bring together basically the North American forest sector and those folks who are operating regionally to be improving together. And we think that can only, serve to benefit everyone. The next piece, though, and the part that I love to work with, is that these SFI implementation committees also have a bit of an action mandate where they come together to do community-focused work, conservation work, and collectively invest into different programs and initiatives that are going to help advance, basically SFI's mission, that world that values and benefits from sustainably managed forests. So that can, look like a bunch of different things. In some cases, they do collectively invest and undertake projects around biodiversity conservation and doing some of that research. One of the exciting pieces that I've been really happy to work with is finding different training solutions that at a very systemic level throughout the forest sector can create a baseline for understanding the unique and inherent rights that Indigenous nations hold. And then the different practices that, whether it's through their organizations and their staff or all the contractors they work with, because it's a complex sector, that there is that baseline level of recognition that can then lead to more effective relationship building, more effective collaboration, and ultimately a pathway forward that better aligns the work they are doing with the self-determined priorities, the rights of Indigenous nations in those territories they operate. So we are doing that work, and that's the type of work we support. You know, a lot of them are thinking really deeply about how their efforts can be used to further advance the fight against climate change, and how forests can be part of that solution, and how sustainable forestry can be part of that solution. Fire resiliency and awareness, right? Doing more and better and more inclusive research, because, you know, that certainly I do know has been an issue. Sorry, I accidentally changed it there. And then, you know, just generally, how can they work together to work more effectively with communities, to communicate better, to create more inclusive opportunity for communities to connect with forests, to understand what sustainable forestry means and looks like today, and then hopefully through those relationships, what it can potentially mean for tomorrow, right? So that it is aligned with communities' priorities, with all of those things that are going to help create a more sustainable planet. So I love to mention this because it's a powerful opportunity. And while only those certified organizations are mandated to be part of them, we make them participate in those SICs. They are open really to anyone who has an interest in sustainable forest management. And that can include certainly Indigenous nations, Indigenous communities. So as that opportunity to build relationships, to get connected in with some you know, initiatives that are happening on the ground and in the forest, to, you know, to get involved with forest-based research around community priorities. These can be really great opportunities to connect, because you're connecting at scale in a number of ways. So I think, yeah, I'd really encourage you to check those out, and certainly to connect with me if you do want to connect in there. Another really awesome part of what we do is our granting programs. And right now, in fact, we have an RFP out for our SFI community grants program. This stat, I think, is about a year out of date, but this has been running for years and years and years, and we've now we're now surpassing about, you know, $1 million as a nonprofit in collective funding into really community focused forest-based work. And these projects can be really diverse. We hope they're creative, but one of the main requirements is that any proposal coming forward is it's brought forward through collaboration, and certainly, you know, they can be, of course, and we would welcome those that are First Nation led by First Nations businesses, or First Nation led nonprofits, for example. But again, one of those pieces is aligned with our mission. You know, it's not just one organization advancing this alone, and we really do hope that partnerships can come forward, or at least relationships that, you know, we'll hope to grow into a partnership that can help to bring the best of what everyone's able to offer together, so that we can invest in some of those scalable solutions. So as I mentioned, the RFP is open. We're talking at a good time. It does close on March the 17th. So there's about 10 days left to get that in. And you can go to forest.org to access that RFP, or certainly reach out to myself afterwards. And then, of course, there is all of that work that we do specifically with and alongside Indigenous communities. That's the main emphasis of the work that I do at SFI. And all of that work is grounded in our Indigenous relations commitment. It's on our website, right in the Who We Are page. And I really would encourage you to check it out, read through it. It's just one page there. But we really, you know, felt it was important to put that out into the world and front and center, just as that, you know, what we hope is that act of transparency, so that, you know, if you are thinking about accessing one of our programs, reaching out for a conversation, or potentially collaborating with SFI in one way, shape, or form, you can come to understand, you know, what can you expect of us? You know, what can you hold us accountable to within that relationship? Just because we feel that transparency and those opportunities to really be accountable to our partners, to our relations, are important there. And, you know, we really do feel that, you know, just through that and through the work that's flowed from it, we've been able to grow a lot of really great relationships. As I mentioned, as Michelle mentioned there, I've been with SFI for just over 4 years now. And through the diverse and growing range of programs we've had, you know, just in that time, and, you know, a bit preceding it, but we've really, you know, proudly partnered with and been able to invest in over 180 Indigenous communities right across Canada and the US. And I really, I would like to think that that is a testament to just our real drive to continuously improve and adapt what we do to what we are hearing and what is going to make the most impact. Really, to building out a team. We have a whole team of us doing Indigenous relations now, which I think is fantastic for a very small nonprofit organization, just because we do want to be able to be there and have that relationship and then grow alongside all of those different outcomes and that good work that we're doing. So it is something we're really proud of, and we're always looking to partner and invest in even more communities. So that was our community work. That was the first pillar. And I promise I will try to make the next ones a bit faster so that we have some time for Q&A at the end. But the next really important aspect of our work that I had touched on is SFI's conservation related work. And really like the purpose of this, as I've mentioned, is to build that knowledge, that data-driven knowledge of what positive value can sustainable forest management do for people and the planet, and specifically some important areas of conservation that I'll talk about a little bit later. But then how can we start to use that and take those learnings and continuously improve and hopefully normalize continuously more effective and more sustainable conservation practice, so that we are thinking in a holistic and well-rounded way and can normalize that throughout the forest sector. So the conservation work is a really important part of what we do. One cool part of it, in the community pillar, I talked about how our implementation committees are a unique aspect of SFI. In the conservation world, our research requirement is a really unique aspect. So within the SFI certification standard, we require every single organization to invest in forest-focused research, and we track what those investments are. And since 1995, so when this really started to get going, those commitments have now totaled nearly $2 billion in forest-focused conservation research funding, which again is something we're really proud of, and we're able to do that because we work at sort of that North American wide scale. And that funding has gone to a bunch of different areas. It's often driven by the implementation committee interests, by the interests of their community-based partners, by the priorities being brought forward by other NGOs around biodiversity, water quality, et cetera, so that those investments can keep getting put in that continuous improvement mindset into those areas that are going to make the most difference. And certainly one of the areas that has started recently, and one that we're proud to be partnering in, is better integrating Indigenous knowledge, locally held knowledge into research-based initiatives, and partnering directly with communities to do it, to understand that their intellectual property, their rights, their laws, their values are respected in what we do. Because I think we are all aware that history, especially in terms of that knowledge mobilization, has been far from a positive one generally. So that is something that certainly this past year, and we continue to invest into, again, hopefully normalize throughout the forest sector, which is our little neck of the woods. While the conservation impact work, that research is pretty diverse, a lot of it does go into three really pressing global issues these days, right? Certainly, human-driven climate change is a global issue, and we believe forests are a solution. So one of the big research emphasis pieces has been around understanding the role that forests can play in mitigating and hopefully reversing some of those impacts of human-caused climate change. And specifically looking at carbon sequestration and all of those different things, right from in the forest itself to our practices. Within our practices, to how the different operations and vehicles and all of those things that are used, right, can be reduced to lower our own impact as a sector there. And then also better understanding and thinking about creative solutions for how all of those things we use and love every day, like that toilet paper, like that pizza box, like those 2x4s, can more effectively be those carbon sequestering tools, so that through the practice of sustainable forest management and use of sustainably managed wood products, we can collectively address, climate change together. Certainly biodiversity and the loss of biodiversity is another major global issue. And certainly in North America, forests can and hopefully should be part of that solution. It is the place where a lot of biodiversity is. So continuous research into better understanding what those intersections are and how practices can be continuously improved to support greater biodiversity is always of interest. And then of course, water, right? Water is essential for life. And our fresh water comes from forested areas. Many cities, they don't often think about in urban centers, but the main filters for their water are forests. So certainly the practices that we do out in the bush have an impact on human health, on water quality, and on all of these other things we're talking about, like biodiversity and sustainability. So these have certainly been major areas. I talked about the climate change pieces already, but this was actually, as of last year, formally enshrined within the SFI standard as an objective, which is kind of our highest level of pursuit within certification, basically ensuring that forest sector organizations who are certified to SFI are thinking about different climate change risks that are associated with their operations, as well as different opportunities and actions they can take to make a difference around climate change. And similar, we actually have a new fire smart forestry objective, just understanding that catastrophic wildfires have been a major issue and a major impact in many communities and on many forests. And there are things that we can do to collectively manage them in a good way that are not only healthier for communities and for people, but healthier for our forests. So those are our two new pieces that really have been a result of that conservation work that we've been doing. Much like the community grants program, we also have a conservation grants program. There's an RFP that goes out once a year. I will say historically, and every year it changes a bit just as priorities change and as funding changes, one of the joys of the nonprofit world. Whereas the community grants are often in the range of about $10,000 to $20,000 per project per year, the conservation grants can certainly be much larger than that, let's say. And these are those opportunities to look at those landscape level impacts in that really robust data-driven way that can help show the benefits of sustainable forest management. And again, there are some really great examples and projects in partnership with First Nations. There's one actually right now going on with the Penticton Indian Band, where a forest sector company has adopted the nation's riparian management guidelines that they had developed and just integrated them into their operations. So now they're able to do like that data-driven research work to say, okay, let's look at the impact of now using the nation standards, right, as that company's own. So I think, again, a really cool progressive approach that I hope to see more of personally. But some of these things that we're able to fund through our different grant programs here. Our education work is another really awesome, really fun pillar, and it's all about advancing environmental literacy, forest literacy, and helping to encourage and support young people in thinking about stewardship and hopefully finding a pathway for themselves in the forest, or at least thinking about a forest in the different work that they do. It's one that I certainly have a lot of fun with. That work is broken into sort of four main components. The first is around forest literacy. So this is often advanced through what we would call our Project Learning Tree network. And Project Learning Tree has been operating in the United States now for decades. And recently, about 2016, 2017, came to Canada as well. It's the sister organization to SFI. But what they do is they develop curriculum aligned teaching tools and resources that different educators can get trained on and bring into the classroom, right from like little toddler pre-K students, like getting them just to pick up leaves and have fun with that and interact with the forest, right up through grade 12 and going into post-secondary, where we can build, or we have different activities for classrooms that get students thinking about all those different really important voices and perspectives that any forest manager needs to consider to be doing forestry in a way that is thinking about people, is thinking about forests, is thinking about building healthy, prosperous, thriving communities, and everywhere in between there. So those resources are all available through our websites. Some of them are free, yeah, they are really great resources to bring into classrooms or other land-based initiatives that we're involved with. So we're really proud to be the first national partner of the Outland Youth Employment Program, and this year we're actually going to be, I think, doing a pilot in one of their camps, bringing some of these activities into more of that land-based learning context with those high school age First Nation students. So lots of different uses, and something for your own communities I'd really encourage you to check out if you haven't already. The next piece of that work is our growing skills work, and this is often about building both those hard and soft skills that are going to support young people in finding employment. And that ranges from having workshops and resources around how to write a good resume or cover letter or really ace your interview, right to working with individual communities to address specific skills that would help young people get forest-based employment in the local context. And that has looked like, for example, with one remote flying community, we helped fly in a certified chainsaw instructor because they said, the young people are out using chainsaws anyway, we might as well train them to do that safely. So we said, okay, there's a forest-focused skill. First aid, silviculture training that can help them open doors to local jobs. It really is meant to be quite flexible, so that again, we can align and work with communities to advance their interests, because every community, every forest is different. From there, we also have our PLT mentorship program, which has been running for several years now. And it really is a sector leading program where we can connect young people who are interested in forest-based careers with established professionals. And it can, different cohorts run for different lengths from weeks to months. And actually, Catherine, who you see here, who now works on our team from Seine River First Nation, she and her mentor, she was in our very first cohort years ago. And literally, I think every month now they still connect and maintain that relationship and support that growth. And I think that's really what that program is here for. Find those supportive folks who are in the sector and can help them find and achieve a pathway for themselves that makes sense for them. So another really great program. And we've actually just last year, or maybe 2 summers ago, and I'm losing track of time, we supported a really cool community-based pilot of this program where a First Nation partnered with their local mill that was in the area, and we're actually able to support youth employment from the community in the mill for the summer and have sort of a curated mentorship experience where those young people could work, but then have that navigator who they would do those activities with. So again, for your own communities, if you're interested in that type of work, we have sort of the mentorship expertise, that curriculum, and then would work with you to tailor it to whatever is going to make most sense in your neck of the woods. So that's another piece. And then of course, there is our green jobs work, and this looks in different ways over the years, but this is in its simplest form direct funding, often wage matching, to get young people employed in and around the forest, or in those wide diversity of jobs that make forest-based work possible. Because not every forestry job is in the forest. And especially if we're thinking from an accessibility perspective, right? Like if we're only talking about deep out in the bush, that can limit opportunity for some young people. So again, we really do try to think very comprehensively and inclusively about what those opportunities are, so that as many young people as possible have those opportunities to get involved. We're really proud that since the program has started, we've helped to place over 5,000 young people into green jobs experiences. And across the board, we've been able to maintain gender balance. And that, I don't know how much you know about forestry. It's a pretty big feat. It's kind of a male skewed sector, to say the least. So we have made that really big, emphasis and priority to ensure that every year, no matter what those goals are, gender balance is achieved. And we do this, of course, by working with hundreds of employers from the SFI network, that network, that growing network I shared off the start. And within that, we are especially pleased that of those 5,000, we've helped to place over 900 Indigenous youth into green jobs experiences. And those youth are from over 100 different Indigenous communities. Many of them got placed right in their own community. And again, much like maintaining gender diversity or gender balance, we've recognized from very early on that status quo isn't good enough. There is, despite Indigenous communities being in the forest, there is often underrepresentation. So we have really made it a goal to ensure, if Indigenous peoples are about 5% of the broader Canadian population, and we've said every year at least 10% of our positions need to be going to Indigenous youth, Indigenous communities, Indigenous businesses, 15 really being our goal that we most commonly hit. So we're really proud of that work. And again, we do it through collaboration, through partnership, and by doing our best to build a team that can work with community to do the work that communities know need to get done. The very last pillar that I will talk about is our standards. And I like to save it to the end because I think it is often the one when if people know anything about SFI, it's kind of the one they know about anyway, the third-party forest certification. And really, certification is all about building sustainable supply chains. So it's a volunteer mechanism, a set of standards that forest sector organizations can adopt that show they're going above and beyond what they're regulated to do. And in doing so, they have access to use the SFI eco label that you see here, and really through that, hopefully demonstrate to customers, potential customers, that they really are trying, to go above and beyond, and then it can really help them to achieve some of their business development goals. For scale, SFI is by far the largest third-party forest certification standard within North America. It's one of the largest in the world. In fact, I think about 25% of all global certification is SFI. And it just keeps growing. And one of the reasons that when I'm often working with communities, smaller organizations, often, it's one thing that really seems to resonate is that, SFI is more than just a forest management standard. It's more than just certification. We really have made that emphasis to do all those things that I've been, talking about for the last 45 minutes now, which is really build that robust and diverse suite of programs, resources, support, so that when we put a standard out there that says you need to do this, we're not just sending everyone out to the wind to do it. We really are then there to work and make those investments alongside of organizations, of communities, of businesses, to be able to then actually do those good things we hope they're going to be doing. So yeah, it's this is a smaller part of my work, but it often is kind of what brings all those different pieces together. The SFI Forest Management Standard, it has like 17 different objectives at this point. And again, those are kind of our highest level of goals, of practices that different organizations who are certified need to do. And that ranges certainly from, our objective 8, which is to recognize and respect Indigenous people's rights within their operations, to visual quality and recreational benefits, to fire resiliency and awareness, to climate smart objectives, to really working to have community involvement and outreach to different land managers and different landowners and all sorts of other things. It is quite a large standard. It's an interesting read if you're into policy, but really it is meant to be comprehensive because forests are diverse. The different components, need to be explicitly considered if we're going to do it in a consistent way. So certainly the SFI standard attempts to do that. And it is a continuous improvement standard where every 5 years, and we actually just finished up the last round of revisions last year, really we open it up to the public where anyone has the opportunity to say, here is where I think the standard needs to go next. Here is how it needs to evolve to continue leading to good sustainable forest management. And we really are, again, proud of that very open and inclusive process. And I've been part of it now just because I was around for that. And truly, every single person gets a response. If you have a suggestion, if you have a comment, like, and it's, say about the type of work I do, I will write you a personalized response, just because it is important, again, that we are demonstrating that at least, voices are being heard and hopefully considered, and then hopefully through that process translated into that next generation and iteration of our standard. So one of those really important pieces, as I had mentioned, is our objective 8. So to recognize and respect Indigenous peoples' rights and traditional knowledges. And really the way that we do that is by supporting relationship and hopefully understanding, because we do recognize that fundamentally rights and rights related issues are a nation to nation, government to government conversation. SFI is an NGO, it is not a nation. We can't, define or attempt to define what those rights are. Sort of, the most appropriate place we feel to be within those conversations is to respect the outcomes of those nation to nation tables and ensure that as best we can, our forest sector network is actually respecting those as well. And to do that, right, like, there are a bunch of mechanisms, but one of them certainly that we feel can be, will be really important when we think about not just today, but the future, really is relationship and respectful relationship. So whether it's through creating space through our standard, through ensuring at a baseline, there is a consistent level of training for forest sector organizations, or putting all of those other programs and services I've been talking about into the, out into the world that can actually be those vehicles, those spaces where relationship can happen. Right, we do hope to really help to build that relationship landscape that is sustainable for today and for the future, and we'll just keep leading to more understanding, more respect, and more ability to collaborate towards a sustainable forest. I won't go into all of these right now, just for the sake of time, but like I had mentioned, certainly all of our standards are directly on our website, and I really would encourage you to take a look and to understand them, because if there are forest sector organizations in your territory that are operating to this standard, it certainly is a standard that you can hold them to. So it can be helpful. And if you do, if you have trouble finding it, please just reach out to myself, and I'm happy to connect and talk through them and answer all sorts of questions that we certainly won't have time for tonight. One of the pieces of certification that certainly I work on and I'm most proud of is supporting Indigenous communities, nations, businesses, organizations in certifying to the Sustainable Forestry Initiative standards, if and when it makes sense for their economic development vision. And today there are over 50 Indigenous nations, 48 of them actually in what's now Canada, who are either individually or collectively certified to SFI standards on more than 10 million acres of forest. And that number is, much like SFI certification itself, continuously increasing. And what's cool about SFI is we have a bunch of different options, again, recognizing that every nation is different, every community, every forest is different. There are different aspirations for how management, sustainable forest management, should look like today and for the future. So in addition to sort of our large scale forest management standard, our fiber sourcing, our chain of custody that I've talked about, there are actually a couple newer options that we really hope will support greater inclusion, greater utilization of the tool of forest certification for Indigenous communities and businesses. One of the tools is our small scale module for Indigenous families, peoples and families. So this was born out of a realization that forest certification can be administratively cumbersome, let's say. It requires a lot of data management, and especially for smaller forests, just maybe 30,000 hectares or less, the amount of effort that goes in is potentially, not worth the time sometimes for the benefits that communities can get out of it. So we developed the small scale module, which takes all those same principles, but manages them down to an administrative and fee sort of structure size that does work for smaller communities, especially those that say aren't necessarily like actively managing it for economic harvest. Certainly that can be a part of it, but it really is supposed to be more accessible. And right now, we're really proud to have finished up a pilot with the Comox and Qualicum First Nations on Vancouver Island, who are actively utilizing the standard and actually working with others as we speak to advance down that process and support them through getting their forest certified. And we actually just released a brand new urban and community forestry standard. It's actually in draft form, soon to be released. And this is specifically for communities who are managing forests for values other than economic processes. And by that, I mean like commercial timber harvest. We've spoken with and worked with communities who say, you know what, like we have this forest, whether it's through additions to reserve, through treaty negotiations, through private sale purchases, right? Nations are reacquiring management of forests in a variety of different ways. They say, we're not interested necessarily in starting a forest company, but we want to manage it for wildfire resiliency, for the ability of our nation's citizens to be able to go and utilize the forest for traditional practices, right? But we're new to this, so we could use a framework to support us in thinking about the right things. So like that's where sort of that urban and community forest standard can come in to really ensure that we are thinking in that people and community focused way. So just another opportunity for smaller forests especially to be managed in a very thoughtful, and internationally recognized sort of context. So the very last thing that I'll leave on, because I know I've been talking for quite some time here, just doing as much brain dump as I can in the time an hour will allow, is that one of the best opportunities we have for relationship building is SFI's annual conference. Being a binational organization, every year we bring together about 400 people, people who care about the forest, people who are managing forests from Canada and the United States, and actually this year from around the world, to just talk about those issues that are top of mind, to hear from folks who are doing really progressive work in a number of areas, whether it be, climate mitigation through forests and conservation work, to workforce development, to what are those partnerships that are actually those role models for how respectful relationship between the forest sector and Indigenous rights holders should look. So this year it's May 14th to 18th in Vancouver, and it's going to be at the Weston Bay Shore there. And we're really excited already to have a number of, I would like to think, really awesome speakers who are going to be there, right from Regional Chief TG to President Karen from the Métis National Council, Chief Price from Comox First Nation, who I mentioned is using that small scale module, Chief Lorraine Cobbinus from Mitigug and Misun Forest Management, who are they've been using SFI certification for a very long time and are just real leaders in so many ways in collective community-based sustainable forest management. We just confirmed the general manager from Stuik Resources Joint Ventures, the Secwepemc owned business, who again is collective management and doing really incredible work. Leonard Joe from the First Nation Forestry Council, and many more that are just growing. So I really do hope this year it's going to be a really insightful conversation, a fun one. We have some field trips planned, an Indigenous, a local Tsleil-Waututh-led walking tour in Stanley Park. We'll be going to the Bill Reed Gallery to learn more about Coast Salish culture, just given that's the territory we'll be in, and we keep adding more. So I really do hope you'll be able to make it. We do have a number of free registrations available for representatives of Indigenous communities, just to ensure, again, as many folks are able to be there as possible. And if you do have any questions, please feel free to reach out. You can find it right through our website, and we are always happy to connect, have a conversation, learn about what you're doing and what you're hoping to do, and just see, how we can potentially be there to collaborate and partner in whatever way we can. So with that, I know I've almost brought us right to the top of the hour again. But if you do want to learn more, there's a lot of great resources at our website, and I'm also happy to connect, and Elsie will be sending out my contact info later. So with that, I will turn it back over to you, Michelle.
Oh, Paul, Mia Sin, that was such a great presentation. I had nothing but smiles on my face, particularly when you talked about the youth and investing and making sure that our young people have an opportunity to learn and to build in their own capacity. I appreciate that. Also, the implementation of Indigenous knowledge, I think, and the effort. So I just acknowledge that and honor that. So thank you. Thank you for your presentation. We have like but 2 minutes left. Anyone out there has a question, there's the website up there. Take note of that. I'm sure there's a contact place where if you do have a question moving forward, look up their website and shoot a question out there. I'm just reading in the comments quickly. Very interesting presentation. Good to hear Vancouver Island growth in this regard. This is from Bonnie. Thank you for your info and the personal response and your passion. I also felt that passion too, Bonnie, that Paul brought to the table today. So thank you. And then Ken, quickly, if you can answer this, what percentage of paper products produced in Canada are sourced from SFI, Certified Forest Organizations? And I'm going to look for that logo from here on out as well. So there's your one question.
I will say it is a question that is certainly outside my personal realm of knowledge. And I had seen it in the chat there, and I was going to ask maybe Elsie, if you are able to send me that just through an email, I will find the answer and get it back to you. And that way you can, provide it back to Ken. I'm actually now personally interested in knowing the answer myself. So I appreciate you, Ken, for bringing it up.
Awesome. Just so you know also that I believe that this presentation will be sent to all of you who had joined in our webinar this afternoon, because there was a whole lot of information so much good information that you brought to the table today. So I believe that is coming your way as well. All right. Well, that's it. That's all we got for time. It was a really great presentation, Paul. Yes, and thank you so much for being here and bringing this knowledge to us all. We honor you and the work that you're doing. Wow, it's amazing, incredible. So this, you joined Paul, who's with Sustainable Forestry Initiative. So thank you so much. And we will hopefully see each other again. Thank you all for being here. Have a good rest of the afternoon and take care of yourself. Be safe, walk in a good way in creators world. That is what this is all about. Hey, all right. Take care, everybody. Be well. Peace.